Charmaine Denise, and I am a spiritual life coach. I'm also the host of this series. Today, I am talking about my coming out journey as well as my spiritual evolution. So, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for watching and be blessed. So, coming out. I officially came out at the age of 21. It was my last semester in college. And up until that point, I remember really struggling with some very personal feelings and attractions I was having, probably for the last like 6 months up until that point. And the only people that really knew were my closest friends, my two closest female friends who I call my sisters. We talked about everything, and I remember just sharing a lot of what I was feeling, just a lot of um, shame, anxiety, depression, just so much that was happening emotions wise, and we would just talk about everything. So they knew a bit about what I was grappling with. And it wasn't until I went to a leadership retreat. It was on campus. It was a leadership retreat, and I remember we did an activity, and the um, the leader of the retreat had to stand in a circle and called out different um, things that we would identify with. So, like a first generation college student, female, black, multiracial, whatever. And if it applied to you, you stepped in the center. So, when the leader called out, I identify as LGBTQ plus, something like something pushed me in the center of the circle, and I remember freaking out. I remember just the amount of fear that came over me because I'm like, I don't know what I just did, and I don't know what this means. And I just remember just feeling really nervous and being a leader and being very involved on the campus. I didn't know how I would be received. I didn't know what conversations would take place after this. I didn't know how this was gonna pan out, and I just remember being very, very scared at this very vulnerable act. So at the end of that activity, I remember we had a breakout small groups, and we talked about how that activity made us feel. And I remember freaking out, thinking like, oh my god, these people are gonna ask me questions and I don't have any answers. And so that didn't happen, luckily. And I remember we just kind of processed how that made us feel. And I remember just being kind of relieved that no one asked me any questions, and also feeling very scared because I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know. I did come out as bisexual at first, and I didn't know what that meant to me. I didn't know how I was gonna proceed. But I remember after that leadership retreat, I walked down. That was upper campus. I went to school in San Francisco, and I walked to lower campus, and I was heading towards, I don't know, I think I was gonna meet up with somebody, and I remember picking up the phone to call my mother because I was like, well, I just made this like declarative statement. And my mother and I had developed a very close relationship, and I just knew she was the main person that if, whatever I was going to do, I was going to need her support. So I called her, and she picked up the phone. I was like, Mom, I got to talk to you. And she's just like, right away, she's like, oh my God, what's up? And I remember telling her, I was like, I have something to tell you. She's okay. And I said, I'm bisexual. And there was a pause. And she's like, okay. I was like, yeah, Mom, I like boys and girls. I'm like, let me just really try to break this down. And she just kind of, I remember her saying, Charmaine, I love you, and I was kind of prepared for whoever you were going to bring home, so, I love you. And I'm like, wow. And this relief and pressure kind of lifted off of my shoulders, and really for me, she was really the only person I felt like I needed to sit down and have a conversation with. Everyone else, everybody else, everything else around me was, it was secondary. I didn't feel like I needed to really have to explain. And I didn't. And I continued to evolve from there, but it was a very nerve-wracking time. It was very scary, and after I did come out as bisexual, I did feel alone, and it didn't really, I didn't really come into my own until many, 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 many years later. And that in itself, that was the journey and that was the process. So I was raised in a Christian home. I was raised by a single mother. I attended a Baptist church when I was younger, and elementary, preschool, middle school, I attended a Lutheran school. I attended a Catholic high school, and then I went to a Jesuit university, and ultimately majored in theology and religious studies. That's what my degree is in. So, um, to say that I've been embedded in religion and theology and spirituality, I mean that's an understatement. I mean my entire my entire upbringing and education has been centered around some sort of religion or spirituality or theology. So as far as my own spiritual journey, being in the Christian faith, I will say that laid the groundwork for my understanding of God and helping to build a relationship with my higher power. I say God because that is the term and phrase that I am familiar with. Ultimately, for me, higher power, creator, source, the universe, for me, all of that it's all the same for me. For me. And so being raised in, like I said, in a Christian household and being taught that homosexuality is a sin, that obviously built up a lot of shame, guilt, self hate, and just an overall sadness that I can remember when that first started for me. It was definitely at a very young age because I knew that I was different at a very young age. I didn't know that that difference is that I am a lesbian. And I can think back as far as age 7, just understanding that, okay, I'm a little different. And I would say around age 9 was when I really, really started to struggle internally. And I really started to hate myself. I would say that even though the bigger things I didn't quite understand, I didn't understand what it meant to be gay, I didn't understand what it meant to be a lesbian, I didn't understand any of that. I just know that something in me was different, and that difference I was taught was wrong. And so I remember at age 9 asking God why. Why am I like this? Why am I different? Why did you make me this way? And I remember just having like internal arguments about that, and that was when I first thought about taking my own life. And I know that may come as a shock to a lot of people that know me, but that is my truth. And I thank God that I did not go that route. There was an instance where I did have the means to do it, and I felt a very strong and divine presence come over me, like a hand was placed on my shoulder. And at 9, I knew that God was with me. That for me was the very first miracle that showed up in my life. To be quite honest, if I did not have the foundation and the relationship that I had with God, I don't know if I would have ever came out, to be honest with you. I think that even though the journey was hard, I think it would have been a lot harder for me because ultimately, even though on the surface, um, I did struggle a bit. Deep down, I was struggling with a lot of emotions and feelings and thoughts. In the back of my mind, deep within my soul, I knew that God still had me, still protected me, still loved me. But there was still, I didn't allow myself to believe it. I didn't allow myself to open up to fully receive that love. I still felt like I didn't deserve it. And I think that's where a lot of the teachings, a lot of this outside noise really played a big part in my um, in how I felt about myself. And it just kept me in this cage. All of this noise, all of this outside stuff, it kept me in this self inflicted cage. And I did not open myself up to fully receive the love God had and has for me. And I got in my own way. I got in my own way and really just held myself back in everything. So when we talk about a connection between spirituality and sexuality, for me, in my journey, it goes hand in hand. My spiritual self, my human identity self, they are intricately linked. And I know for a fact that I would not be sitting here today talking with all of you, sharing my journey, if God literally did not have a hand in my life. I have always had a very strong faith, and I've always just had a knowing that something bigger than me exists. And for me, I call that presence God and the universe and creator. I love saying the creator. Um, so that for me is my link, that I am sitting here today and being able to share with everyone the most vulnerable parts about my walk. And that for me is proof positive that God exists. It was a very interesting journey from coming out at 21 to where I am now. I'm 35, 14 years later. And I came out as bisexual, realized that was not the label that was appropriate for me, and not really knowing how to navigate in the LGBTQ plus community. Didn't have very many um, gay friends. I didn't have very many people around me that understood what I was going through. So I felt very isolated. My sisters were there for me as best they could. I mean, they definitely, we had many crying sessions and definitely was there to hear me vent and support me and, really, as I venture out into the gay community, was there by my side at all the gay prides. So definitely a very up and down valley mountain journey, which I'm sure for many of you, we've all experienced at some point. And I really didn't come into my own until I dealt with all the internalized feelings that I buried deep down. Because when I look back and I look at some of the actions and some of the things that I said and did, and even how I was feeling. I mean, they were just projections from a place of an unhealed self. And the amount of, the shame spiral and the guilt of the shame of one, you know, being a lesbian and being taught that it is a sin and that it's wrong, and trying to hide that for so long, and also trying to hide from God, which to me, I mean, that's kind of laughable, right? Like who hides from God? Like you can't, or at least I couldn't, you know, and having many conversations with Jesus and the higher power, and really trying to move past that shame spiral that I put myself in that box that I continue to remain trapped in. I carried around a lot of guilt as well. When I came out as a lesbian, I had guilt around feeling like I let my family down, feeling like I let especially my mother down with so much that she had sacrificed for me and for my brother to make sure that we had a beautiful and wonderful life, which we did. I still felt so much guilt that somehow me stepping into who I am and admitting that, and really living out that truth in this life, I felt like she would be disappointed in me. But I underestimated her, that's for sure. My mother is the most compassionate and loving woman, and she has done nothing but embrace me and uplift me through my entire life. And that was no different as I walked along this journey and this new identity. So releasing the guilt, breaking those bonds of shame, and allowing God to fully love me, because that is what I deserve. And to love myself, that is when I harnessed my true power. And to be able to step into that love and that comfort and that joy and that lightness, it really helped me to heal and to allow me to live my most authentic life and to be my most authentic self. So I have so much gratitude around that, and I am forever grateful for the lessons that I learned along the way and the people that helped me get to where I am today. So one thing that I would tell my younger self is to not let fear hold you down or hold you back. And that love is at the root of anything good. It is the wellspring of goodness. And that God loves you no matter what. And that you are supported and embraced and loved. And to lean into that. And to not allow the judgments and opinions of others to deter you from anything. You are a beautiful soul from the inside out, and the world deserves to see your radiant light. So that's what I would tell my younger self. And in fact, I'm telling that to myself right now. You are loved, honey.